I'm Vivek Sarkar. I'm a professor in the School of Computer Science at Georgia Tech, and I became chair of the school in August. So I'd started my career in industry. I was in IBM research before I even considered academia. And there's someone here who had been contacting me for over 20 years to think about Georgia Tech, and at that point, I wasn't even thinking about academia. And then later on, when I did move to academia, it was to Rice University, which I enjoyed very much. But then when the opportunity came for Georgia Tech, there were a few things that swayed me. I was really impressed by the scale of the computing community at Georgia Tech. Having a college of computing with over 90 faculty colleagues was very exciting. I also felt that Georgia Tech was a place where you could make big bets and do big things. And um, my sense from visits and the interview was that, in general, the climate was very collaborative, which is not something you can take for granted in big places. So it, and then there was a very specific topic. My own personal research was entering a phase where computing hardware was approaching this end of Moore's law, and I work on those software aspects of those problems. And I really wanted research colleagues who were world experts in, post-more computing, and I found that over here as well. So the first thing is I already had my research group and lab set up at Rice, so we had to plan a move for them, and that worked out very smoothly. And I'm really appreciative of both institutions, Georgia Tech and Rice, for helping make this transition as amicable and as possible. So I moved here with a research group of actually four research scientists and four PhD students when I started. And it grew with Georgia Tech PhD students. Uh, in a year or so after I arrived to about eight, and now I'm about a group of 11 PhD students and my research faculty colleagues, the research scientists. So that was one thing that actually helped give continuity. But in terms of using our new context at Georgia Tech, related to this area of post-more computing, soon after I arrived, actually, I think the call for proposals came out less than a month after I arrived. There was a big call for projects in this DARPA program called software-defined hardware that required interactions between software and hardware folks and also rounding up university partners in other places. And a good example of the collegiality was senior faculty here, even though I just arrived, encouraging me to lead the proposal, which I did. And we all worked together in terms of getting partners at other major institutions, University of Illinois, Michigan, University of Southern California, and we were very delighted when we were selected in that program. And I was particularly taken by my Georgia Tech colleagues, everyone pitching in to whatever was needed, whether it was just fine-tuning, formatting aspects of the proposal, of course, adding to the content, or being flexible on budget allocations, whatever was needed for us to win. And for me, my takeaway was this was a place where people are willing to pitch together and are motivated by a win for Georgia Tech rather than just being overly focused on, their slice of the pie, so to speak. So that was an exciting way to kick off some joint research collaborations with others. Um, Also, in terms of getting more involved in teaching, one of the things that I really enjoyed at Rice was actually teaching undergraduate students. And so when I um, took over teaching once a year an undergraduate class on compilers, which is a PIC course in systems and architecture, I really enjoyed the interactions with undergraduate students there. And Georgia Tech has excellent undergrads. Some of them ended up doing research in my lab after that. Some of them did various directed research as well for credit. So I really enjoyed that experience and, updating the curriculum and working with the students there. And in terms of graduate teaching, there were some new opportunities. There was a class that hadn't been taught for a few years, and I had a senior PhD student, Caleb Boss, who was very interested in that material and a teaching opportunity. So he and I agreed to essentially create brand new material for that graduate class in programming languages. And I invited Caleb to essentially be a co-instructor, even though his official designation was TA, and we alternated the lectures. And that worked out very well. And we were delighted when Caleb received one of the college's outstanding TA teaching assistant awards. But actually getting more into the community, I think, in terms of um, and I'm just skipping over all the publications and grants and those kinds of things. But I think the service assignments, and my own take is services, anyone who does services demonstrating leadership, I mean, service is leadership. And when you step up to a leadership role, that's service. So I think it's so integral to what we do as professors. So in my second year, I found myself uh, stepping up to things like serving on the recruiting committee and RPT committees at the college level and various ad hoc committees. And by my third year, the last academic year, I was chair of the faculty recruiting committee. I was chair of the school advisory committee. I was a member of the dean search committee. And I mentioned these not so much as a laundry list, but because these were unique experiences for me to get to know faculty colleagues better. In many cases, it was colleagues in the school. As chair of the faculty recruiting committee, it was really important for me to understand the needs and priorities for different areas in the school. And uh, the Dean Search Committee was particularly fulfilling because there it was really cutting across folks across the institute and giving me some insights as to their roles and getting to know them better. So to me, this is all synergy, the research, teaching, and service. And so, and I find that all that, the 3 years of experience is very helpful to me as I start my role as school chair now. So I mentioned earlier at the start that one of my big draws to coming to Georgia Tech was having colleagues um, who are experts, world experts in post-Moore's law computing related to the end of Moore's law. And particularly, one of the things that drew me to Georgia Tech was Tom Conti's leadership in creating the center that we call the Center for Research into Novel Computing Hierarchies, or CRUNCH, which provided a nice framework for my group when I arrived in terms of um, interacting with a lot of external partners. Our annual Crunch summits are extremely well attended by folks in industry and government sponsors, but also access to really specialized kinds of leading edge hardware in this um, infrastructure that we call Rogues Gallery, which my students were able to use for their research as well. So after I'd been here for a year or so, Tom invited me to be co-director of Crunch, and that was something I really appreciated stepping up to so that he and I could work together on broadening the research agenda and the community involved with Crunch. And that's something that I think is going to just, the importance of that research area is just going to continue to grow because everything that had been predicted when Crunch was started is coming to be true. And there's going to be, a couple of decades as all the implications over unfold. So it's been great for my group and I think other research groups here at Georgia Tech to have a center like Crunch. My group is called the Habanero Extreme Scale Research Laboratory. And there's an inside story as to why habanero that I'll get to in a moment. But here's what we do. I've spoken a bit about uh, the hardware changes that are coming up. What really concerns people is the impact on software, because the whole computing ecosystem that we have right now for whatever uh, platform you can think of, the cloud, servers, embedded, IoT, all predicated on some system software stacks where you can have a whole community of software engineers worldwide contributing new ideas, new applications, new capabilities to these devices through software. And as the hardware is going predicted and is getting more complicated with the end of Moore's law, more heterogeneous, additional challenges with respect to where data is located and how data is moved from one memory to another and so on. The big concern is that it's getting harder and harder to program, and only a small tip of the pyramid of people who are really trained in advanced degrees in computing may be able to harness the capabilities of future hardware. So my group's research is really on enabling robust programming methodologies for future hardware, for parallel, heterogeneous, and extreme scale hardware, which includes research in areas such as programming languages, compilers, runtime systems, and also debugging and verification systems. And what has worked out really well for our group is, even though for computer scientists, some of these topics may be viewed as separate areas, for us, they come together because we have this shared view of an execution model uh, as to how parallel distributed heterogeneous programs should execute. And all aspects to the software are kind of tied in with that model. It's a problem that, in some sense, it's a problem that goes back to my PhD days and my former mentors who encouraged me to work in this area, John Hennessy at Stanford and Fran Allen, who are both Turing Awards, Fran Allen at IBM. Now, as to the name Habanero, when I was at IBM, we were doing some work on a Java virtual machine, and we were hunting around for a name we could use starting with J, and it turned out we could not use the word Java because it had been trademarked and so on for this purpose. So we came up with jalapeno. And so there was a red pepper as our mascot and an icon, and that turned into a very successful project that's now known as the JIKES Research Virtual Machine. So when I moved from IBM to academia, I was thinking let's continue this pepper theme, but go higher and higher in the spiciness, the Scoville units, if you're familiar with that. So habanero was next, and there's plenty of room to grow after that. So there can be more peppers to follow in the future. When you're part of a community, I think it's great to be able to contribute in every way that you can. And I find myself to be in a senior role with a certain level of experience where I could contribute as the chair of the school. So that was really what led me to step up to be a candidate for this role. And then when I was selected, I had multiple great discussions with our Dean Charles and about, our shared visions of the college and the school. And I felt that this confirmed, everything that I'd expected from Georgia Tech when I first joined, that being a place where we can do big things at scale, make big bets, and be very supportive of our colleagues and build a strong community. So I wanted to be able to, continue and strengthen and grow that vision. So that was mainly why I decided to step up to that role. Now, interestingly, in this year, it's turned out there was some additional challenges compared to a normal chair search, because by the time the chair search concluded, we've all found ourselves in the midst of this life-changing COVID-19 pandemic. And I think that's all part of leadership. Things change, and I'm looking forward to the opportunities and bringing a community together under these circumstances. And so far, I think our school has really been responding very well in get-togethers we've had. Most recently in this the thank you event that we did for the interim chair Mustafa, that was attended by more than 50 people and was a great show of community. So I appreciated that, and I kind of like um, this balance with the college where, yes, you have to work with others in the leadership team, but there's this greater context that can help the school achieve its goals, which is different from some other computer science departments that, may be in a school of engineering or a school of science. So I think, we have a very interesting model in Georgia Tech with the College of Computing and our schools. For the School of Computer Science, um, one of my goals is to really boost our leadership in the core areas uh, that we are contributing to in our school. These span, architecture, databases, networking, programming languages, and software engineering, systems and theory, and work closely with other schools in related areas. We have security that's, being formed as a new school. We have machine learning that cuts across all schools in the college and other colleges as well. So in these areas, I'm really keen to figure out how we can um, uh, integrate the research areas into where appropriate to have some really amazing and unique demonstrations of what can be done at Georgia Tech. So one of my visions is to, and my goals is, during my first few years as chair, is to see how we could have a showcase integration of our research areas in addition to all the great work that's going on within the areas. This could span something like an end-to-end systems platform for machine learning with completely new capabilities ranging from algorithms and theory all the way to the devices to nucleate new ideas, which could then be spun off to relevant centers and institutes on campus. It could also involve computing for societal good, something that some of our faculty have been leading in and is emerging as a growing area of research actually in different research fields. So I think advancing our research capabilities is absolutely key, and one of my goals would be to see more integration across research areas where appropriate. Uh, the second is the success of our students, um, and and this includes graduate students and undergraduate students. We are in a constantly changing world that's increasingly driven by computing, and I want to make sure that in the areas that SCS leads in for education, whether it's the threads that we lead in, the PhD students we mentor, the master's students who take our classes, that we give them, inform them with the latest education that's, derived from the knowledge that we gain from our cutting edge research. So um, that's the second goal. And finally, I mentioned this earlier, I think growing and strengthening a diverse community that spans all members of our school, which is faculty, administrative staff, graduate students, undergraduate students. I also want to grow a partnership, internal partners, in other schools, other colleges, and also external partners, companies that are interested in our success and working with our students. So if I think of these goals, I think a few years from now, I'll be able to tell if I if we move the needle on these fronts in a few ways. We can see if we have some more research that spans research areas in a few years from now. We'll can always see how our students are doing in terms of the content in the classes that our school faculty teach. And a sense of community, I think we'll feel it in our gut. We'll know, if you're closer as a community or not. I most, I think the legacy would be to grow on what I said about my goals. But uh, for me, the legacy would be, ultimately contributing to a college that's, you know, really increased its leadership in computing uh, and viewed as a valued partner by companies and research collaborators in other universities and government labs. In particular, I don't pay much attention to the details of rankings, but people have an idea of which are the computer science departments in the top five. And I think when we look at the College of Computing, we are well poised to head in that direction. And I would really hope that my legacy would include uh, contributing to our getting to that kind of position with all these goals that I mentioned. Um, the other legacy that I would really like to have, and this is challenging on multiple fronts, but I really want to push on it, is I mentioned diverse community, and diversity is really important to me. I think there's really opportunities for increasing diversity among our faculty um, and students, especially our PhD students, uh, in terms of uh, seeing more representation of women and other underrepresented groups. And I'd like that to also be very visible by the time I step down as chair. One of my past experiences um, as department chair at Rice was that an effort towards increasing diversity in this case was it was the percentage of women in the undergraduate population actually created a virtuous cycle. Once you reached a tipping point when it actually became easier uh, to grow the numbers. So I'm hoping that we can cross some thresholds in that way for faculty and students to improve the diversity in our community as well.